This is Tom Fox. Andrew is on assignment this week, so I am sitting in solo for this week's Kerrville Weekly News highlights. We begin with a story from the Kerrville Daily Times, which unfortunately says that it is selling its office in Kerrville. The longtime Jefferson Street headquarters of the Daily Times has gone on the market, but the paper says it is committed to this community and it's not going anywhere. The Kerrville Daily Times has been published in the building since 1981. That's 43 years for those keeping score at home. But the owners say it's no longer a good fit for what the paper needs to thrive in the future. While it was a state-of-the-art facility at its time, the presses are out of date, and indeed the printing of the paper has already been moved out of town. So farewell to the Kerrville Daily Times. I'm sure it portends the end of even a 3-day-a-week newspaper in Kerrville. Next up, Ingram votes to hire chaplains. The Ingram Independent School District has unanimously adopted a policy that would allow the school district to employ chaplains to provide a level of support and care for the district's students. Under state law, districts may employ chaplains serving as complementary staff assisting in mental health issues. The superintendent, Dr. Robert Templeton, said adopting this policy does not mean immediate adoption, but it's only the first step. Potentially, the school district could move forward. It does not necessarily mean that it would do so. The next story comes to us from The Lead, which has had several reports about the peddlers ordinance that is currently in front of the city council. Initially, Roman Garcia has objected to any type of regulation, claiming that the discussion of peddlers, canvassers, and solicitors would prohibit discussion of political issues and raise a First Amendment challenge. Of course, that's not true at all. Then somehow a right-wing publication got a hold of the story and said that it was the ordinance would prevent any solicitation between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Well, it's not 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Frankly, anyone who doesn't want to regulate people coming to your door after that time seems like a pretty silly and, frankly, a public safety and health issue. So hopefully it can be sorted out. Even if it can't, I'm sure Councilman Garcia will have a difficult time prevailing on this common sense issue. Our next story also comes to us from The Lead, which reports that the voter turnout for early voting is very low, and Kerrville voters seem to be decidedly blah, according to Louis Amstoy, about the primaries. As of Tuesday night of this week, approximately 12% rather, of the 39,000 registered voters had actually voted. So very low voter turnout. For me, the weekend is going to consist of really some very beautiful weather. It's supposed to be in the 70s. Also, it is the return of the arts and crafts sale at the youth center, so my wife and I are going to check that out. I hope you will join us for our next episode of the Kerrville Weekly News. This is Tom Fox. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Kerrville Weekly News Roundup. This podcast is a production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I hope you will subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever great podcasts are listened to. I hope you'll join Gilbert, Andrew, and myself next week, where we take a look at some of the top stories from Kerrville and the surrounding Hill Country area. Thanks so much for listening.